Hello folks, welcome to another Darktable Landscapes video. We're at the Quiraing today. We're ticking all the cliche Scotland locations off this week with Glencoe and the Quiraing, but really the Isle of Skye is somewhere worth visiting for any landscape photographer. And this is obviously a sunrise shot. We had some lovely fog in the distance over the sea between the island and the mainland, and an amazingly colourful sunrise. And we're just going to pull that out in this shot and generally increase the contrast and all the usual fun stuff. So let's get going. First thing I will do is a straightforward demosaic change, which you probably won't be able to need to do. That's fine. And we'll do a denoise as well. So, whoops, I'll make sure I click denoise, profiled, and probably a lens correction as well. I think if I bring up my settings, yeah, reasonably wide, 16mm. There we go. And it's not quite straight. I don't think it's slightly tilted to the left. In my defense, I'd slept in the car park at the Quiraing the night before, so I probably wasn't entirely conscious just yet. That's not too bad. So I'm right clicking here on the image and drawing a line along what I hope is a straight line. It's not very obvious. I should probably zoom in. Yeah, let's zoom in and see if we can get it. I think half the problem is that this sea fog isn't quite straight either. There we go. Yeah, okay, that'll do, I think. We can always change it later as always. And let's hit Sigmoid. So obviously quite a large dynamic range in the scene. I just about managed to squeeze it all in one exposure. I did bracket, but I think it worked in one exposure just about, so that's fine. We'll raise the black a little bit and maybe drop the white a little bit just to bring it all in and neaten it up. Okay, so now we'll do some white balance, color cal. Let's see what we make of this. Working away. Maybe a touch cool. The sunrise was incredibly red before the sun had come up over these mountains on the mainland. It was probably the reddest sunrise I've ever seen, actually. It lit the bottom of these clouds like the Eye of Sauron. Yes, let's pull it back to about there. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so let's work on the sky. We'll drop that down a little bit. So let's go for a tone equalizer, I think. And we'll mask it off. Whoops. Masking. Pick your magic wands. And let's use the in-image version rather than the graph version. Just roll your mouse wheel down over the area you want to darken or up. You can see how we're kind of pulling out the mountains a little bit more there. Let's go for about that, I think. Slightly weird tonality in the clouds here. It's kind of a yellowy colour from sunrise, so maybe just that later on. We'll see how it looks with the rest of the image. And we'll go for good old Color Balance RGB. Bit of vibrance, maybe a touch of contrast. It's quite contrasty already, obviously. Standard stepped saturation adjustment. Let's pull out the shadows. Tad. Let's see how that's affecting the fog. The midtone, most of the midtones are in this kind of foggy sky area. Let's drop it a little bit, I think. And yeah, I think that's fine. And I'll do my usual little touch of coolness in the shadows. Maybe skew it towards purple slightly, indigo. It's fine. Let's just even things out. That's pretty good. And what I'd like to do is just enhance the light on this side of the hills and accentuate the shadows on this side, just to really give some three-dimensional feel to it. So I will essentially do some dodging and burning. So I think I'll use another instance of the tone equalizer. We'll right click there. We'll mask it again. And I want to kind of darken these shadows. And then I can lighten the other side, and that will give some depth. So I'm ignoring what it's doing to the whole image and just kind of focusing on what we've got on the shadows. That's maybe a touch heavy-handed. There we go. Let's try that. Drawn mask. I think I'll use a path rather than a brush. Let's see how that looks. That needs to be pulled in slightly. Maybe just adjust things a little bit so we're not affecting the sky too much. We don't want to darken the sky unnaturally. You pull it in on this side because that's where we're going to be lightening, but leave it to feather out nicely here, I think. Just filling these in where I see natural shadows so that it's enhancing that. Turn off the previews. Drop the opacity a touch. Less is more, as always. Okay, and then we'll make another new instance. So before I do anything there, I'm just going to call this burning. And I'll call this dodging. I'll mask again. And this time we want to just give a slight bump to this level, about 5. And then we'll mask again, so drawn mask. Likewise, pull in the feathering on this side. I think there's maybe a bit too much on that side as well. Reduce the opacity again. And let's add some more so we get a better idea of the effect overall. Maybe a little bit here as well. Anyway, that's naturally kind of catching the light. Turn off the previews. Still maybe a little too much there. That hasn't feathered much there. Let's see our shapes again. Turn the opacity down a little bit more. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Fairly natural looking. As always, if you weren't conscious of what I've actually done and hadn't just watched me do it, hopefully you wouldn't notice that anything had been done at all. And the greens are looking a little bit saturated for my taste, so I'm going to go for Color Equalizer, pop that on, and choose a sample green. So here it's looking a bit too green. Let's pull that across and nudge it. We'll smoothen out the hue curve a little bit so it doesn't kind of look a bit unnatural. That's perhaps too much, but a little too grey. That looks pretty good to me. Let's just toggle it. Yeah, okay. And I think what I'll also do is just accentuate the pinks and purples in this heather in the foreground. Let's have a look at this one. So many droppers. Yeah. So we'll just generally lift this end of things. But as you can see, we're kind of doing weird things to the sky, so you know what that means. Good old-fashioned gradient mask. pull that in with shift and roll. Okay. Maybe add some lightness to that as well, just to pick them out. It's okay. And let's just add some overall pinkness. As I say, the sky was particularly red, so I'll go for, let's try color correction. It's often a good quick way to just add kind of a uniform tint. That's maybe too strong, but we can always change that. Just drop the saturation a tad, maybe a uniform mask and drop the opacity. Yeah, let's help the sky go from that kind of weird toneless beige to a bit of a pink blush. That's okay. And because this light would be falling on the ground as well, we don't have to kind of mask off just the sky, then you'd start to look weird. So that's okay. Let's do clarity. So a general lift of the whole curve here in the Contrast Equalizer. We can roll the mouse wheel to change our size. That's maybe a tad too much. That's better. I will call this one clarity. Right click for another one, and then we'll use a texture boost, so raising just the ends of the curve. I may drop it on this side as I often do. Depends on the image. Now, I'm not too worried about these lens flares here. They kind of add a little something for me. I don't particularly want to feel the need to clone those out. Some people may. That's entirely up to you, of course. Okay, we'll call this one texture. Let's just turn it off and on again, making the sky slightly weird. So grab our drawn mask, and then we've already masked the ground off, so the color equalizer makes sense. There we go. Now let's try another color LUT, 3D LUT, lookup table. So again, by default, a very strong effect. So a uniform mask, and then just bring that down to a level you're happy with. Often reasonably low. You only want a slight effect. I like the slight fade and the slight pinkness that's adding. Maybe go to 20. A little too strong. Let's go. You can also use the average blend mode just to kind of make it more subtle as well sometimes. Yeah, I think that adds to the overall look. And let's go for a crop, because I've just got the edge of another bit of geology here in the corner that is poking me in the eye. So let's fix that. A straightforward crop. Okay, that's better. And now diffuse and sharpen. Right click and use lens deblur medium. I think that's maybe slightly heavy handed actually, so I will again mask and drop. Let's go 75. Okay. And framing. I don't think it needs really local contrast. There's a lot of local contrast anyway. Just frame up the 5% white frame as usual. And maybe add a little bit of exposure to this area, or perhaps use another instance of Color RGB just to kind of add to the depth. There was more light falling on this than the exposure would suggest. So let's have a look. Color Balance RGB, new instance. We will Let's just play around and see if we can get it looking how we want before we mask it off. Increase the midtones. So I'm not worrying about what it's doing over here. I'm just going to concentrate on this area. That's not bad at all. Yeah, it's looking a bit better already. So shall I use a gradient or shall I use a path? Let's just try a gradient for now. Curve it a little. And fade out. I think, let's see. Find my control through all the sliders. There we go. Again, perhaps a touch heavy-handed. Let's just drop the midtones a touch on the highlights. That's better. Doesn't look like a separate piece of photo stuck in there in the corner now. Okay. Okay, here's the before and after. So a fairly kind of run-of-the-mill early morning landscape shot into the sun, really. High dynamic range. And we've just kind of evened things out. Added depth, added colour. Added some contrast as always. Okay, I think that's all for this shot. Hope you like it. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.